This is a kickoff of our Best of CTC 2015. This presentation is the first of a series of presentations that we're doing from our Cadre Technical Conference that we held here in Plano. And this session is part of our efforts to go ahead and bring a much wider message out to the Cadre community through the community's webcast. So this will be the first of a series of sessions. We want to go ahead and talk a little bit about the Best of CTC and really about the Cadre Technical Conference itself. Dick, I'll ask one more time if you're out there. If you can hear us and join us, you can do a *6, #6 or *6 to join us. I'm going to go ahead and try to fill in for Dick. I hopefully will do a good job. These are some of the slides that we've added for Dick to speak to, so I'm going to go ahead and try to cover them for him. The Cadre Technical Conference, hopefully you have all heard about it. We had it here in Plano in January 2015. It was extremely well accepted. We had about a little over 60 attendees, as well as more than 25 CA people attending and taking part of it. We had the majority of the Datacom and Ideal staffs here to meet with all the customers and go back and forth with them and basically spend as much time with the customers as we possibly could. We did have 3 education tracks that we ran on the first day. We had an Intro DBA, Experience DBA, and Application Development track. We also had for the first time, was what we call focus groups, which were deep dives where an expert would take you on a deep dive or a tour of a product, and it was really meant to give the individual a wide breadth of information. These ran for about 2.5 hours, and several of them were very, very heavily attended to the point that we probably needed to schedule more than one instance of this. We had 3 keynote sessions given by senior CA people. Folks like David Hodgson, who is the senior vice president and leader of our business line. The keynote sessions were around the overall strategy, mainframe strategy at CA, as well as our data management group strategy, which Datacom is part of the data management business line, and our big data strategy, which Datacom has got a significant intro, if you will, into big data. And we believe that big data and Datacom will be something that you, as a customer, will be dealing with as a connected entity, if you will. In addition to that, then we had over 3 days of sessions, and the sessions were basically broken into 2 tracks, DBA and Applications Development. And these sessions ran concurrently. We had 10 session slots for each of those tracks. And we also had 3 evening get-togethers. The evening get-togethers were opportunities off-site to have everyone kind of get together, discuss the day's activities, and really just kind of to link up and create friendships and so forth that would carry forward. So I think the entire conference was well attended. I think most folks felt that it was a really good conference. It had a lot of great technical information. Everyone learned something, and on top of it all, it was a whole lot of fun. I think everyone came away tired, wore out from a long week, but also very enthusiastic about what they learned and all the friendships that they made. The Best of CTC presentations that we're kicking off today is something that the Cadre board, along with several of the users, requested. And it was basically to take our top ranking sessions, those sessions that had the most amount of information, the ones that the clients liked the best, the ones that they thought that their peers would like to see, and take those sessions and repeat them through the Cadre community as a Best of CTC 2015. The sessions were intended to be given by the original presenters, so we want to have the original presenters present the same session that they presented at the CTC 2015. We want to do the sessions on a 2 to 3 week cadence. Basically what we'd like to do is start out, and we've already scheduled the first 4 sessions and do these about every 2 weeks. Sometimes it'll be 3 weeks depending upon if it's a holiday week, spring break week, things like that. And we're going to create an environment where we'll just keep, feed out for the next probably quarter, we'll feed out the next group of sessions. So our first installment of the Best of CPC 2015 is going to be the Datacom and Ideal roadmap, which we're doing today. The next scheduled installment will be a session on a new product the CA has called CA Mainframe Application Tuner, which has a direct interface into Datacom. It was one of the most heavily attended both focus groups as well as attended sessions within the conference. Everyone was very interested in this because it gives them a new tool to help maintain those legacy COBOL applications out there for Datacom. And it was a very well-received session. So we're going to do that next. We're going to do the using SysView with Datacom. This is always a hot topic of how to best use SysView to monitor and tune your Datacom environments. This is one of our focus groups. The room was packed to the gills, if you will, and we feel that this will be a good session. And we're also going to then end out the first installment with our best practices for big data with big data demos and how to connect CA Datacom with big data. So that'll be our first installment of sessions. These have already been scheduled through the community, and we'll be holding these on a 2 to 3 week basis. So some final thoughts on the conference. Basically, from everything that we've heard and that the Cadre board heard and we've done in our conference review, the conference got top marks from all the attendees. It was one of the best conferences in recent years for Datacom. It had a lot of information. One of the things that everyone should know is we already have the next conference is already in the works. This is giving us an opportunity, if you will, to start planning out the next conference, which we're targeting for spring of 2016. We want to go a little later to avoid some of the cold weather. So we're going to go a little later in the spring in 2016, but it is something we already have in the works. We will most likely do it in the Plano Center here again because that gives us the best access to facilities and to the Datacom personnel. And we'll be doing all of that. Some key thoughts that we had that came out of this was that we'd like to have more user presenters and more user presenters teaming with the CA presenters. It's really great when a CA person talks about a new feature, but it really adds value when there's a user there that basically says in how they use the feature and what results they've gotten. We also had a lot of requests for more panels. We did a sort of an open forum panel on the Experienced DBA education track that went really well because we asked every person to present one of their problems and have the entire group kind of come back with how they would solve that problem. So we've had more folks that wanted to have more open panels during the week where we could have panel discussions on certain things and have experts on a panel basically answer the questions for the audience. And people wanted more hands-on. They really liked the idea of like the SysView focus group and so forth, but they want to be able to do more hands-on during the conference. And probably the biggest thing that everybody wanted was more time. We had taken 3.5 days and stuffed it with as much information as we could. Most people felt overwhelmed, I think, towards the end of the conference. They want the same content, but they'd like us to spread it out across maybe 4.5 days so that it would be give you a little bit more time for breaks, a little bit more time maybe to repeat a session that was maybe it had a high attendance, and we want to repeat it for the folks that couldn't get there. So those were the key thoughts. Again, it was very well received. If anything, we probably needed to have more instead of less. It was very, very well received. So what we're going to recommend for everybody, obviously, keep in touch with the Cadre communities. We'll be talking more about planning for the conference. I'm sure the Cadre board will be looking for folks to help both the user speakers as well as user coordinators and to help with us on coordinating the content and that sort of thing. So it was a great conference, and I think we look like we're going to have another one within a year, and it'll be a really good start out, if you will, to the Cadre Technical Conference Series. So with that, I'm going to move over to the actual presentation for today. This presentation is a repeat of the presentation that was given at the technical conference, and it lays out the CA Datacom and Ideal roadmap. This is sort of a quick check on where we are with Datacom and Ideal, what's coming soon, what's coming out the door in the future, and sort of a level set for where we are with the products. So our agenda, basically we're going to do an overview, look at where we are currently, look at some roadmap or future items, talk a little bit about a brand new philosophy at CA for how we do our development and partner with our customers, and then give you some takeaways or a summary for the session. So the big overview for Datacom and Ideal, when we look at our benefits, is really focused on the 24/7 aspect, the high-performance database platform. You know, we provide that cost-effective, reliable database platform for, you know, all of our customers. And, you know, when we do it at a very minimal cost and stability, performance, and outages. So Datacom's all about giving you everything that you could possibly get through the system as fast as possible with the least amount of resources. That's what we focus on. This slide just kind of presents, if you're familiar with the way the independent analysts look at the database and the relational database world, they like to break our products into certain categories, like a database, you know, the web access and so forth. So all we've done here is just kind of give it a list of our tools. I don't think this is anything shocking to any of our customers. Basically, we have the database, the dictionary, SQL, which are the basis for our relational database, web access through server, application development is through CA Ideal and also COBOL. You can do web development through Ideal Web. We obviously handle CICS as our primary transaction manager. And then we have the SysView as our core tool for doing performance management. From there, then you get into PressPack and a lot of the other options we have that are available for all of our clients to use with Datacom. We want to talk a little bit about the Datacom and Ideal team. We have a management team that's based here in Plano with myself, Kevin Schuman, the Vice President of Product Management, as well as Sue Grudy, who is our Principal Product Owner. And we'll talk a lot more about what the Product Owner does when we get to the Agile part of the presentation. And we have Sheila Miller, our Senior Product Manager, who's actually up in Framingham that helps us with the Datacom and IDMS teams both. Joe Lynn's our Chief Architect, and we have Vince Abadi as our Senior Director of Software Engineering, and Dale Russell is our Director of Software Engineering. Now, these are just key people in the management team that you can reach out to. The entire Datacom group is always available for clients to talk to, reach out to. Anyone on the staff is always there to help you. In addition to that, you'll see that we kind of broke out and pointed out the levels of places where you have some engineering and support folks in Ewing, New Jersey, as well as we have support folks around the world. Part of this is what we call the follow the sun support, so that no matter what time of the day that you call in for a support issue with Datacom, that issue will be picked up by a support technician who is currently at the office working normal business hours. That allows that technician to be there on site with all the power of the CA network and so forth for him, so that you're not waiting for someone to get to the office. Now, if your problem is a serious problem, we have to get development or engineering involved, then we may need to beat them and bring them in. But the follow the sun support and the way we have our locations for support spread across the globe guarantees that at the time that you open that issue, that there'll be someone at the office with Datacom skills ready to take that first issue. One of the things that we wanted to introduce to everyone here, if you're not aware of it, you should be by now, is that we are moving the Datacom documentation out into the public space. We've created public bookshelves that give you the capability through Google to actually search and find our documentation, so that if you are outside of your site, you're working from your sister's house on vacation and you have a problem and you need to look something up in the Datacom manual, you can actually go out and Google our Datacom bookshelf and find the bookshelf and actually get to the manuals through the public system. Now, there are a couple manuals when you go to access them here, they'll ask you to sign on using your CSO sign-on, but we're moving very quickly to get all of the manuals out into the public space. The bookshelf also has some opportunities for us to extend beyond just the public documentation point of view. Some of the things we'll talk about are we're adding new types of documentation out here. We can use the public bookshelf to do things like a scenario, which is really not a manual. A scenario is more of a document or flow chart on how to do something. You know, it's great that I can read the manual, but I really need to know how to set up and execute change data capture. Or there's this brand new feature that we just developed for Datacom called Online Area Move. How do I use it? Rather than have major chapters spread across multiple different books that you have to look at, we can create a new type of documentation called a scenario, which basically has all the information that was in those specific manuals, like the DBA guide, the utility guide, the messages guide, but will all be in one place, and you'll be able to walk through from beginning to end and complete that task using that scenario. Now, if it's a smaller change, you know, it's a simple change, it's just a new utility function. It really doesn't need a whole lot of how-to, but you do need the documentation pretty quickly on it. We can have a smaller version of a scenario that we call an article. An article is basically, you know, it doesn't necessarily have the whole flow chart of, are you ready? Did you do all the prerequisite steps? It's more, hey, here's some information you need to know how to run this utility. It's not really that hard to do it. So we can do that in a much smaller thing, which is called an article. But what the bookshelf and the public bookshelf and this whole capability gives us is that we now have our documentation manuals as well as new add-on types of documentation that we can all put in one place for the client to share. So from that, which is sort of something that's current and part of our current offering, if you will, we're going to move into the next phase of the presentation here, which is talking about where we are with Datacom today. As you see here, we have some nice pretty boxes on the presentation, and it kind of shows you where we are. You see that our version 12 headstone now has a end date of 2014. So it's basically version 12 started back in 2009 and is now officially out of support. So it's got a nice little headstone there, if you will, and provides you with the birth and end of support date. I don't really want to call it a death date. The version 12 did provide a lot of new functionality, like the zip, the online reorg defrag, the brand new data NE and data SP reports. We also published the first green book for Datacom, and we had many SQL enhancements and so forth, all part of version 12. What we're moving into now, though, is most sites should be moving closer to the version 14. The initial drop of version 14, which came out in 2011, had our zip exploitation for Datacom at about 50%. It did offer the online, or the ability to do data encryption at rest for DASD. It offered a brand new set of options called Simplify, which were really good for clients to consider to put in place. Simplify gives you the ability to put some locks in place so that you can prevent accidental disruptions to your system. Simplify has several levels that you can employ. All of our AD clients who use Datacom AD run at Simplify at the max level, which basically provides a lot of protection against things like accidental deletions of the CXX or accidental overwrites of the LXX. You know, someone who runs a DB utility does the LXX reset while the muff is up. Those things that are not really good things to have happen. Simplify provides a lot of protection for clients, and we do recommend those that are full Datacom clients to start moving towards looking at the levels of Simplify. You may not be able to put all of the levels of Simplify in because you're at a current, you know, your current DASD isn't set up correct, or not correctly, but not set up to match the way the Simplify works or whatever. But if you can take some of those benefits and put them in place and step through, and maybe this release do a little bit, next release do the next thing, what you're building is an environment that someone who comes in who may not be as skilled as you has protections against accidentally hurting themselves. So Simplify is all about putting in some rules and controls that help the Datacom environment protect itself against the accidental misuse. We did a lot of automation. Version 14, we no longer have an SVC, no longer does the client required to build any of the data spaces. Everything that we do under the covers. And this gives us a significant easier footprint for the multi-user to come up on a machine where it's never come up on before without anything happening like an SBC being installed and so forth. We support large page support, and we've added in multiple buffer pools. If anything, we've given clients more bells and whistles and knobs to turn than possible. The multiple buffer pools actually allows you to go out and create a buffer pool that you can set aside for just specific table processing. It's another way of basically giving high performance or high SLA required tables the best possible performance. And with version 14, we also delivered another set of SQL enhancements, as well as several enhancements around the 24/7 operations. Version 14.01 was the first Agile project that we introduced. And as I said, we're going to talk about Agile, but basically Agile is a new way of thinking about how to do development, how to produce smaller pieces of updates, if you will, but make them available much quicker for the clients, and make this a customer-driven perspective. It's very, very important that we have customers, active customers, partnering with us in these Agile projects. And later in this presentation, I'll make a pitch for anyone listening to the presentation to help us join into this Agile thing and become one of our validation partners. As a validation partner, you'll get to be part of the planning process, see these features being developed, give us input, and actually, if you will, lobby for some of your things that you need to be part of this Agile development process. It lets us do accelerated delivery, getting the features out much more often, so we're not dealing with every 3 years you get a major new functional release. Instead, every 6 months or so you get a smaller, much easier to implement update of feature functionality. And these are all high-value functions. These are things we want to add to the system to make it more beneficial to the customers. So 14.01 was the first of the Agile projects that did finish up last year, and we delivered all this functionality to the clients. Now, anyone that upgrades to version 14.0 at a current maintenance level is automatically at 14.01. This is not another migration or an upgrade. It's basically just having the right level of maintenance on. If you see, we had some major new features of 14.01 delivered. Things like zip at 90+%. We now have the capability for those sites that have zip processors that a multi-user can offload over 90% of its CPU processing to the zip processor. That's a major cost reduction factor for our sites. Sites that have zip processors, can use this to really reduce the cost of running Datacom. We have some sites that have actually reported as high as 98% zip offload. So a multi-user that used to use 100 CPU seconds to do a week's worth of work now uses 2 CPU seconds at this given site on the paid-for processor and 98 CPU seconds on the zip processor. And when I mean paid-for processor, zip processing is not included in the IBM standard billing for your rating for your processor. So if you're paying for software license based on how powerful your machine is, zips are not included. Therefore, any processing done over there doesn't increase the cost of running the software on that machine. It makes it much more efficient. We added the capability for CDC+, which says our change data capture facility has now the ability to not only capture changes, but separate the changes amongst 9 different repositories so that businesses that have 2 majors or more than 2 major functions within a company, maybe they have police operations and they have tax operations. Both of those operations want to have change capture and be able to look at the data that's captured, but they don't necessarily want the data to be viewed by the other operation within the same business. Maybe the police operations doesn't really want the tax people seeing folks that got arrested, and the tax folks don't want the police to see the current billings for house taxes. Whatever the need be, it doesn't really matter, but we give the client the ability to separate the changes that are being captured into 9 different repositories and have those repositories secured to the business group that needs that data. Now, Why it's 9 is because that was the number we chose. You know, it's limited to 9, but we could take that greater if there was a need within the companies. When we first developed this, several of our validation partners, you know, had 2 or 3 as their requirements, so we could produce it at 9, making that being a reasonable amount. Automatic CXX updates, we did several fixes to keep the CXX, the row counts, the blocks in use much more in sync, and there's a significant presentation around that. I don't want to go into too detailed, but most of our sites still use the CXX report as their tool to measure how full things are. But as we've gone through multiple releases of Datacom, the CXX report has continued to get less and less effective. It doesn't really represent where things are currently. So we have gone through and made major changes in the system to keep the CXX and the CXX report as current as possible. We've also introduced new technology in 1401 that allows you, a client, to move a data or index area while it's in use. So even though you have people actually actively updating and deleting records in a given table in a given area, will let you move it from one 3390 device to another 3390 device. Well, why would I want to do that? Well, your site might have a new Shark DASI brought in and they want you to move everything over to it, but you have to be up 24/7 and can't take an outage in order to do the backup and load. In another case, you might have allocated a data set for a load that you had originally, and you had your secondary allocations, and all of a sudden you realize you're right at the very end and it's growing too fast, and you need to basically have a much larger data set. In previous times, in order to get those extents, you'd have to take an outage in order to reallocate the data set to a larger size with the bigger secondaries. With the online move, you can actually move to a new format, a larger data set with larger extents while it's still in use and before you run out of that last extent. So you have a lot of possibility with the online move. For many of you, IBM has been talking to you about the active-active philosophy. Active-active is the capability of having high reuse systems where you have 2 or more disparate, completely separate environments that are actually actively working with the same data. It's a logical replication, if you will. We delivered the first instance of our Datacom support for this, which we call MQTS. We've also done a lot of other features in 1401, performance features. We've added several enhancements to the server. We created a whole new complex called SQL Web Connect that allows clients without an SQL or server license to use the products in a limited fashion with just a DB license. We added additional Ideal syntax, and we've added additional functionality for Ideal. That's just a real brief run-through. But there was a lot delivered in 1401. Every one of those features was requested by 1 or more participating clients, in many cases several participating clients, and we're now all available to the client base through this Agile project. And realistically, they're available to the client base this quickly because we have these partners who partnered with us, customer partners, who helped us get this put through. So I can't stress enough how important it is to have the customer partners with us and working with us so we can deliver technology on a regular basis to our clients and not do the 3 to 4 year drops, which are really very hard for anyone to take in at one time. So where does that leave us? Well, that leaves us to where we just delivered and went GA this past fall with version 15 of Datacom. Version 15 of Datacom was a major release. It is probably the last large major release like this where we're delivering a large amount of functionality in one release. As you see we did with 1401, we're going to do the same thing with 15. We're going to start delivering feature functionality in 15 in these smaller chunks so that you'll have the ability to go to 15.0 but then add new functionality in 15.1, 15.2, 15.3, and maybe put version 16 as being something, you know, not 3 years out but 6 or 7 years out because we have the capability of delivering a lot of enhancements at 15 without making it go through that whole upgrade process. Now, Version 15 was the last what we call waterfall project for Datacom. It was several years in development. It has tremendous amount of functionality in it. And the one core thought is to remember that all the features we're talking about in 14.01 are also going to be available in 15, are already available in 15. So while we are developing and making 14.0 better and faster for our existing clients, we're also making sure all those things immediately are available in 15 for the clients that move up to our version 15. The big idea here realistically is we're going to make 14.0 better to the point that we can, and then we're going to cut over to 15.0 and start moving our clients over there and use that as the base to keep moving forward. 15.0 has a lot of new functionality, like the ability to turn off keys logically so that you can determine if you need the key or not. If you don't need the key, if you turned off the key and no one complains because the key is going away, you can actually go out and remove the key without interrupting processing. You can delete an index without interrupting processing. You wouldn't delete the index until you've made sure that you've turned off the key flag, waited a while, made sure no one complains that the key is missing or they have apps that are failing. You can delete it. In reverse, you can add a new index on the fly with version 15. So you have a new application coming in, you need an index to support it, you can actually add the index without taking an outage. You have an index that you basically want to rebuild. You want to move an index from one index area to another index area using our multiple data set indexes. You can basically create the new index and then do a swap, which basically swaps the application to the new index, and once you've done that and you're sure that no one's using the old index, you can go out and delete the old index. For clients that stayed up forever, one of the things that we're seeing now is clients are staying up for 4 or 5 years. A number, which is the unique record identifier, which is a 4 billion number, was something that we never thought clients would ever have a data area have 4 billion records in it, and those records would never get, the record number would never get reset. Now we're seeing clients being up for 4 or 5 years, and those numbers are not realistic anymore. So with version 15, we give the clients ability to reset the URI online so that they can stay up again for a much longer period of time. All we're trying to do here is to keep clients from having to take a system outage or a application outage in order to do things like add indexes, delete indexes, or in this case, reset the URI. While we hope no one needs it ever, we did go in and look at our restart processing. So after a failure of Datacom, our Datacom will restart in parallel, which means that a restart that may have taken a few minutes now can be done in a few seconds. The parallel restart allows us to use every task available to MUF to parse out the work and get all the restart operations done as fast as possible. Again, we hope no one ever has a MUF that happens that they have to do the restart, but if they do have to do the restart, this will make the multi-user available much faster. We've now moved all in version 15. In version 12, we moved the IXX buffers above 64-bit. In version 14, we moved the DXX buffers into 64-bit. In version 15, we moved the data buffers into 64-bit. So the majority of all of the Datacom buffers can now reside in 64-bit memory, allowing 31-bit memory, which is very limited to be used for other things within the system, and to allow you to expand your buffer pools to their maximum size. We've created the ability to do dynamic extend for virtual data sets. So we've had dynamic extend for quite a while for a lot of our Datacom data sets, but one of the things that clients complained about was the fact that, like the CBS index or the temporary table manager, which are virtual data sets, if they go full, the only way to make it bigger was to basically take the multi-user down. So now we give you capabilities of extending the virtual data sets while the MUF is up. So if a data set gets full and it's a virtual data set, you can issue a command and actually add space to that and continue on. We allow you to make your LXX bigger without taking an outage. So if your LXX is getting beat up and it's cycling very fast, you have to spill it a lot, you can actually dynamically increase the size of the LXX without taking an outage. We support large row sizes. For years and years, Datacom was really focused on row sizes that were, I guess, less than 15K because they fit nicely on on a LXX block. We realized that in some cases, ECM transparency files and whatever have come in place where those large row sizes were troublesome, because if ECM file is 30K, you need a log block that's bigger than 32K, and we have span logging. So we've now added the capability to support those large row sizes with our span logging on our new logging facility, which is the parallel variable log, which is much faster. We've added subtasking around opens and closes to make them run faster, better performance. We've added the capability for simplicity. If you need to initialize the database, you can just say init the database, and it will basically init every area in the database. You don't have to code the individual init card. So if you go back to, well, we started out by allowing you to just back up the database by DBID, and then we came out and said, well, we'll let you Redix by DBID, and then we let you load by DBID. Now we'll actually let you init by DBID. You can still do all the individual commands if you want, but if you want to just say, hey, init the index and all the data areas, you just can do code an init statement for the DBID, and it will do the entire database. We've added a really cool new feature called SQL Cache for the SQL performance. This allows us to capture dynamic SQL as it comes in and validate if the same statement keeps coming in over and over again, that we can basically reuse the statement rather than reparse it every time. It makes SQL type operations coming in through server, which is all dynamic SQL, to be much quicker. The SQL cache also gives us an opportunity for customers to actually go out and view the SQL, see the SQL that's running, and even possibly substitute. If you see this query come in, it's really a poorly formed query, you could actually create some abilities to doing substitution of SQL syntax through the SQL cache. So it gives us a lot of opportunity for growth within SQL, a lot of opportunity for 1501 and other follow-on features to continue to provide the DBA ways of basically helping the user applications that have poorly coded or poorly constructed SQL perform better. Always, for every release, we add new SQL syntax supports. We have new capabilities with SQL. A big thing for Ideal is in version 15 of Ideal, we've added the support for documents. So web documents can now be brought into Ideal and parsed and also produced by Ideal. This gives us the next step, if you will, in the Ideal web support. We've changed server, so server is part of our shadow support. So when a multi-user falls over, a server can dynamically move from the failing multi-user to the shadow multi-user. We've added CICS Java support, capabilities to create either Java programs that can do native call within CICS, or what would be more typical, a Java program that issues a JDBC call within CICS, that we allow the JDBC call to actually occur within CICS, but we redirect it through the server to be processed against Datacom as a typical open system call. And version 15 has a lot more. Version 15 is available. It's out on the bookshelf, and you can actually go look at the version 15 release notes if you want to get the full details. There's probably 250 pages of changes that version 15 delivered. So it's a major new release. It is our basis for going forward, and we want to basically have all of our clients on the 14.0 platform now and be looking at the 15.0 platform going forward. The other thing that's really important to point out is we are getting to a position where our clients cannot take outages to do upgrades. They really can't shut down the system and go through the conversion process. With clients running version 14 and upgrading to version 15, we have now created a process that a client can actually go from 14 to 15 without taking an outage. It's a series of steps they go through that allows them, using the shadow multi-user, to fail the 14.0 environment and have it start as 15 without an outage to the users, and then be running the 14.0 environment with the 15.0 code. If there's any failure or any problem with the code, they can always fall back to the shadow, which is still 14. After a period of time, then they can go through a series of steps that will convert the environment from the 14.0 environment. So you're already running the 15.0 code, but you can convert the 14.0 environment to a 15.0 environment. It allows the client to basically start testing the code ahead of time, get comfortable that the 15.0 code meets their needs, They can't really use a lot of the new 15.0 features because the environment's not there yet. But then when they're ready, they can step through the steps to make the environment version 15 and never take an outage. This is one of our key things going forward. We want to be able to deliver small, consumable updates that don't require major changes, major upgrades, and at the customer site, major validations of these brand new processes. So where does that bring us with version 12? As we talked a lot about version 14 and version 15, version 12 was EOS, and you should be aware of this. We've had announcements out there. Basically, the core products went end of support in version 12 at the end of 2014. Ideal and IBC went end of support at the end of January in 2015. So we are now basically in a position where version 12 is no longer a generically supported release of Datacom and Ideal or the tools for that matter. We really want folks to upgrade to version 14. The great part about it is if you do upgrade to the current maintenance level of version 14, and we can't stress enough that you need to come up to 14, but to apply the CARS maintenance, which brings you to the current level, so that you are at actually that 14.01 level that we talked about in the previous page. And then for our VSE users, Datacom VSE is at version 11 right now. However, we are about to release the VSE version 12 for our VSE users. Version 12 in the VSE world actually has a combination of the version 12 features for ZEOS as well as several of the key features from version 14. ZVSE platform is significantly different from ZEOS, and we have limitations on what we can do within a given VSE release. So while it has the majority of features that we talked about for ZEOS 12 and 14, there are some very specific things like zip processing that won't be available in the ZVSE platform. But for sites that are running ZVSE version 11, we are about ready to come out with a ZVSE version 12. When I say about ready, I can't give an exact date. That's not allowed with our own internal standards here, but it will be within a very short period of this presentation. So that's sort of a summary of where we are today. This slide just brings everything out in one big slide for you. I'm not going to go back through it, but it kind of gives you where we are from a current point of view. Now, we've talked a lot, or I've talked a lot during this presentation about this changeover to Agile. What is Agile? Agile is a concept of doing development based upon looking at what the client's current needs are and how we can put together a team to quickly develop and deliver these small, eatable chunks of code that answers the client's questions or answers their need without waiting for several years to the next release. I know many of you over the years have probably submitted DARs and you were very happy to know that we accepted your DAR, but you're probably very unhappy to know that we said it'll be in the next release because our releases are typically 3 years apart. This capability allows you to have an enhancer come in, which are now called ideas and part of our ideation on the communities. Have an idea come in, and if it's a very well-accepted idea and something that is something we can do very quickly, we can actually put that into an Agile team as what we call an epic or a user story, have that vetted by the team, slotted for implementation, and actually delivered to the validation partner, which we hope is the person who actually submitted the idea so that they're part of the process, and have that validation done so that we can then go out and deliver it to the whole client base in a very small, short period of time. For example, the online move capability we talked about is a tremendous capability for all sites to be able to go out and handle things like data sets that got too small, handle things like new DASI devices. It's a great philosophy. It's a great technology. That was handed as an idea from the customer about June of 2014. The Agile team took that in and was able to deliver the first drops of that supported code by November. And it's a significant amount of functionality. There's online area move has several scenarios attached to it. It has a lot of functionality. It's very nice and probably is going to be beneficial to every ZEOS site out there. But typically something like that would have been delivered in the next release 3 or 4 years out. Instead, the Agile team was delivering test-level PPFs and things that just the validation partners would see within 3 to 4 months, and had it into the general populace ability to use within 6 or 7 months. So it's a significant way of adding to the velocity of how we can deliver feature functionality. But also, the key here is to deliver small pieces. So we're not basically throwing 256 pages of changes at you at one time and saying, consume all of this. Instead, it's just a few changes that you consume on a constant basis. We think this will be much easier for the sites to bring in and provide a lot better beneficial. So where does this come back? Number one thing here is we need customer participation. We have some great customer validation partners. Several of those were recognized at the CCC as being our superstars. They really, really help us get the code out to you much quicker. But we want to open it up to a much wider base. So we encourage everyone listening to the presentation to get involved with our Agile process, become one of our validation partners. It's very simple to do. There's a website, validate.ca.com, that you just click through it. There's only a few little things you click through, and you can become a validation partner. If you are a validation partner, you get to participate with our Agile teams. You get to hear what the Agile teams are going to work on. You get to actually provide feedback on what they're doing, see the plan before it happens, see the plan while it happens, and actually participate with testing the code when it comes out. So as a validation partner, you get a much closer, much more in-focus look at what the Datacom and Ideal teams are doing. And again, the validation partners are probably the biggest single thing we need to do in order to be more responsive to you guys, to give you the highest quality possible, but deliver things at a very agile, very active pace. So where does that take us? As we see here, we have on this slide basically 1401, 14.0, 15.0 as we talked, and we now have what is our next thing? Where are we at? What are we doing? So for tomorrow, or what we call tomorrow, and again, this is a moving target because we're already into 14.02, we are delivering the next set of functionality for the 14.0 and 15.0 users. We're calling it the 14.02 project because it's directed towards a 14.0 client base, but in truth, it's really the 14.02, 15.02 because we're delivering all this functionality to 15 clients at the same time or within the same time. One of our commitments here is to deliver the feature functionality to a 14.0 client, but as soon as that is validated and vetted, to get that same functionality available to 15.0. So it is a way of providing, if you will, a drop down for the 15.0 client, so they're also getting all this really cool new stuff at the same time. What we have planned for the 14.02 project for the IOS environment, as we said, we did the online move for data and index. We actually have already delivered to our customer validation partners the online move for the CXX and the FXX. This gives them the ability to move some of the system data sets, and we are looking at the online move for LXX. Here's the other side of this. The online move for the LXX can take a significant amount of time. Our validation partners help us decide what pieces do we really need to do online move for. And is it really worth moving the LXX, or is that something we could just not use for online move? Because it may not give tremendous value to the client since we have the extend capabilities and so forth in 15.0. So a lot of times our validation partners help us to look at what is the viable thing. What are the things that we need to do to give you the best possible bang for the buck without going over and doing what Mike Madden, one of our senior execs, says, which is boil the ocean. You may not need 9 options. You just need 2. So let's just give you the 2 that the clients really agree on. Included also, we've already demonstrated this, and we have a presentation about this, is big data uplift. The capability of taking data from Datacom and moving it into big data and managing it in big data. This allows clients to continue to use Datacom as their book of record, but to provide data for their data scientists and data analysts within the big data environment. Active continues to be an IBM thing that's moving forward, and CA and Datacom need to take steps for each IBM implementation. We're moving forward doing more of the Datacom implementation, so the Datacom can be there when IBM's active is delivered. Today, we support the active standby and active query models, which are the two release models that IBM has provided within Datacom. We're looking at doing online compression. We believe that compression, with its capabilities of using the zip processor to do all the overhead of compressing data now, can actually save a client CPU. It's going to use zip CPU, but that zip CPU will be much cheaper to use, and because it gives you compressed data, it reduces significantly the number of IOs done, because IOs are all done on the expensive processors. So we see online compression as being a tool that was sort of going away because DASI was cheap and CPU was expensive, to suddenly be something that's now valuable again, because what we're seeing in most of our sites is the amount of data is just exploding. Compression will give you a great opportunity to help maintain that data footprint and keep it from exploding without adding to the CPU overhead, because we have these zip processors we now use for all of our compression operations. So it's a great idea, but if you're a shop that can't come down or that data cannot come offline, be compressed, then it doesn't really buy you anything. So we're looking right now and working in 1402 to deliver the capability for a DBA to go in and turn compression on for a data set, and without interrupting access to the data set, actually have that data set compressed. If you're running for 3 days and you figure out, well, compression didn't buy me what I thought, you can decompress it and go back to uncompressed without taking an outage. All this will be very critical to shops that have very large data footprints, need to compress it, but can't take the time, for A, an outage to compress it, and B, the chance that if it didn't work right, didn't give them the benefit they thought, that they'd have to make a second outage to uncompress it. So online compression is something we're working on. We're also working on some things to make addeds in certain cases much faster. We have new SQL functionality like user-defined function tables. We're working on scrollable cursors. We're working with more big data and ability to ETL data in the background over to big data. It's great that we can basically talk to big data and use server to uplift the data, but maybe we want to pass across large amounts of data that we really don't want to be there watching it run. We just want to submit some sort of batch process that just takes the data over and puts it in big data. So we are looking at integrations around ETL and big data. We're doing more and more with CA MAT and integrating more of its capabilities to be able to also not just do COBOL, but to do Ideal, and a lot of other things. So 1402 is our current active project within Datacom. It's got several things we've delivered to our validation partners already, and they're actually testing and have even in some cases signed off on. We have lots more that we're doing, and we would like to have more partners involved. So 1402, as I said, it is directed to the 14.0 product line, but all of these features become available in 15 very quickly after 14. So what do we do in the future? Typically, when we're talking about the future, we're looking at things that are beyond the next 6 months. We're planning on version 14.02 and the features and functions for that to run through probably the next 6 months of this year. And we have a lot of really cool technology we're delivering and working with clients on. But what do we do beyond that? Well, our goal beyond that is then to start moving over to our 15.0 product line. Clients at some point have got to basically say, okay, we're moving to 14, we're going to move to 15 because it has a lot of new functionality in 15 that we want to make use of, like the multiple data buffer pools, the 64-bit buffers, etc. So our next plan, if you will, outside of 14.02, is to start doing the same sort of Agile projects, deliver new functionality to the 15.0 base, to bring 15.0 forward into 15.01, 15.02, and 15.03. As I said, I want to be able to basically keep 15.0 alive for years and add new functionality. Always have it fresh, always have it new, always have it doing things that you need to do, but not basically require you to do another major upgrade, because that's what one of the biggest challenges for all of our sites is, finding the time to do upgrades for these systems. We want to continue the work of the zero outage upgrade process. As we said, you can go from 14 to 15. Today, it's basically a series of steps. We want to make it even more. We want to make it such that the upgrade from 15 to 16, when we do it, well, from 15 to 1501, there really isn't going to be an upgrade. It's just going to be maintenance applied at a certain level. But if we decide to go to a 16, we want to make sure that when we go to 16, there's even easier ways to do it versus what we have between 14 and 15. You can't do a zero upgrade from 12 to 14. We have some ways of doing it really fast, but you still do an outage between 12 and 14. Between 14 and 15, you can now do a zero outage, but it takes several steps. So while it's still no outage, it takes several planned steps. When we go from 15 to 16, I want to make that something that maybe you don't even know it happens. You know, it's sort of like you cut over the code one day, and another day you just say, hey, I'm ready for 16, and it happens. So we want to create those processes. In addition, we want to look at a lot of high availability. These are things that our customer validation partners and have come across in our DARs and our idea trees, things like capabilities of basically changing the data block size while the data block area is in use, making the data area smaller, expanding a data row. Folks want to be able to add a field to an existing data row without taking the database down. That's a challenge. That's really tough to do, but we know that people need to do it. And, you know, they can't afford for the database to be offline because the application's a critical 24/7 application, but they need to add a new field. How do you do that? So we want to be able to provide a lot of these online capability functionalities. Now, the core CBA discipline, CA is going through a rename of this, and we are looking at this, so it will probably not be the core CBA discipline come next CA World, but we are looking at a way of creating a DBA discipline for the Datacom users. This gives you a new common user interface that you can use across DB2 and Datacom and hopefully IDMS and IMS, be able to manage your DBA tasks from a common user interface and to give you specific stuff. No, so we don't want this to be a dumbed-down version of SysView where you don't really get the kind of functionality that you get. We want this to be a common UI that all the database uses, so you have a common working model, but that we build this out such that you get the information you need to control Datacom. So we want to be able to have a one way of dealing with all the databases, but have it drill down to the level of detail you need for the specific database you're working with. Big data, as we talked earlier. We want to have the capability for Datacom and our big data databases to work in a cooperation mode. We want to be cooperative processing model. We want our clients not to move data from Datacom to big data and permanently store it in big data. We want to be able to use big data as a way of expanding our capabilities within Datacom. We have several ideas along this way of things of doing things such as compliance. You know, we've had requests, so we've really not been able to fill within the Datacom space, so we might be able to fill in the big data space for things like, I need to know what my data looked like on this date in the past. Well, we can do that in the Datacom world, but that's going to take a lot of resources. Big data gives us the capability of storing thousands or millions of images of the Datacom data out there with timestamps so that you can easily reconstruct what the data looked like last week and not have to go through a significant process on the Datacom side. So we have a lot of capabilities where we can use the Datacom data in cooperative mode with big data to provide some of this new functionality that our businesses are asking for. We continue to want to have simplified operations. One of the things that we've always said is that we want to have this ability to create operations where the MUF settings are reduced. Now, a given expert DBA may want to have every MUF option at his fingertips and set them exactly the way he wants them. But a more junior DBA or someone who's trying to manage a lot of systems and really doesn't have time to spend doing all those MUF option tunings may want to just go ahead and give us some guidelines, like, hey, you can have a buffer pool of 16 meg, And you figure out whether it should be IXX, DXX in data. And the Datacom multi-user basically starts out with some numbers, watches the performance metrics, and realizes that, hey, we actually need more index or less data or vice versa, and can dynamically, within the rules the client set of 16 megs or 16 gigs or whatever they give us, within that rule set, actually adjust the multi-user parameter setting. And basically report back to them that we did it, so that the DBA always has the ability to go see what we did. And if necessary, actually have us record that, so the next time the multi-user starts up, it can pick up those starting options and start at that place, rather than have to relearn every time you cycle the multi-user. We see a lot of stuff along this way of making the multi-user simpler to manage as being a key for the DBA's success. You know, DBAs have a lot of things on their plate, and going out and looking at multi-user every day and tuning it may not be one of the things that they have time for. So we want to create a lot of stuff within the Datacom environment to just make it continually easier to use. Obviously, performance is something we have to adjust for every release. Clients want us the ability to do more for less, reduce the cost of ownership, run transactions cheaper, all those sort of things. But also, clients are asking us to put more processing into the multi-user, to do more analytics, to do more processing adjustments. They want to create the ability to do things faster, quicker, cheaper. And all of those things are things that we try to do on every release. And then obviously, we need to extend our application development reach. We want to be able to expand how web services can interact with Datacom. We want to have modern application development platforms. We want to extend the capabilities of Ideal and other application languages to get into Datacom. And we really shouldn't care where the application is running. If the application is running on a Linux platform, we should provide services to that the same way as we do with a batch platform in the ZIOS address space. So we have lots under consideration. Every one of these boxes, we have some project we're in our backlog, some research we're doing, whether it's in combining, like an application development, we're working with a whole group within CA that's focused on application development and look at how we can join with what they're doing with things like Layer 7 and other kind of application orchestrators and things of that nature. So there's things that we're doing within Datacom across the board that will lead into the 6 boxes, if you will, of our target for future considerations for beyond where we are today with 15.0 and 15.01. I kind of precluded this slide. I tend to do that every once in a while, talking about something on the previous slide. I kind of covered all this. We are looking with the application development effort and our other areas within CA that are doing this stuff to be able to create things like web services for inbound and outbound, and taking existing apps and making them web services. Creating architectures around the REST architecture, which is the industry standard. SOAP was great, but it doesn't fit REST, so everybody wants to be REST. But it provides this capability and functionality. So we're doing a lot around the application development world because we want clients to be able not only to run everything they have today on Datacom, but be able to add anything new coming down the pipe as a Datacom application. This is some of the things that we're looking at. Obviously, we constantly look at the metrics for performance, and we're doing more work, and we have more plans for doing more work around space utilization, fragmentation, disorganization. All of these are things that happen within the database that cause performance issues. We want to make them better. We want to always look at CPU and system resources and look at ways to reduce things like contentions, deadlocks, logs, journals. We're doing everything we can to try to make our performance better. So one quick note, we had talked about the public bookshelf earlier. One of the things that we had a gentleman come up and present to us is we may think, and we really are pushing that the move to the public bookshelf is great because we actually have this capability of adding scenarios and articles and doing things that are really kind of cool that we could never do with our old fixed PDF documents, or if you even go further back with our old manuals. What you're going to see happening is we're not stopping there. Our Tech Info Center is working to produce even more interactive documentation. We're creating wiki sites. We're breaking manuals down into top topics and subjects so that clients can not only go out, I always joke with folks and say, our manuals are fantastic because if you know what the question is, they'll provide the answer. But if you don't know what the question is, you'll never figure out the answer because you didn't know what to ask or which manual to go to. The wiki and the next step of mainframe documentation is to try to build us into that environment where you can ask questions like, how do I build a database? And it'll actually direct you to all the pieces of information you need to see in a common stream, taken from all the various manuals and put it together for you. So our idea is, with this where did my mainframe doc go? Basically, we used to be manuals. We've done this major step to get to these public bookshelves where things are searchable on Google, and we have scenarios and articles, but we're not stopping there. We're moving to the next generation, which is to create this basically open bookshelf where we're going to have a lot of information out there today, but also go to the next step, which is to build this more wiki-based environment. So today, we've gone from this locked-up docs to this open bookshelf that has all this great stuff in it, but we want to go from there to a wiki-like platform. Most folks today are actually doing some wiki activity already with other products, either from CA or even from Microsoft or other folks. This is moving into a more common thing. We want to be able to actually create a Datacom wiki, if you will, that will have all the things you need to do, that you can actually go out and ask for questions, you can watch pages for updates, you can do all kinds of interactive processing. And if you want to try it out, you can actually go to this website, wiki.ca.com, to look at it for certain manuals that are already on the wiki platform. So this is something that the Datacom team is moving to as our next step for the doc processing. So our goal really from within the doc is basically to give that same agile look, if you will, to how we do development to our doc, to create this agile environment where we see in the future that clients can actually collaborate with us via the wiki. When they find a problem with the doc, instead of calling it a support issue and requesting a DAR and enhancement of the doc or reporting a problem with the doc, they can actually go in and collaboratively give us what they think the doc should say. Make it available such that we can actually quickly look at what they're saying and say, hey, that makes sense, and actually use some of the combined power of all the minds that are out there that know Datacom and bring it to force on the documentation. So it becomes a collaborative, agile environment with our agile partners again, right, our customer partners helping us to build the content. So hopefully we've kind of brought to you full circle here from, we have a very, decades of transactions running on Datacom, we're the core platform. Our goal in life is really rock solid stability, scalability, security, but we're adding in the effective use of resources, making things cheaper to run, whatever. And what this is all about is trying to also help us with the CTC 2015, and what we've put together is a build, I won't say rebuild, but maybe re-energize the cadre community and give us the capability of having all the knowledge that's out there be shared and be available for people to talk back and forth and actually work together on. So there's some takeaways that we'd like for you to take back with you. Datacom is a wide portfolio with a worldwide committed team. Our goal is to have the highest quality releases. Our strategy is to focus on what the customer needs when he needs it. We want to be able to go out there and look at our roadmap and say, yes, we think this is the way we're going, but if things change in the customer environment, we want to be able to focus that and make a change to the roadmap. One of the major problems with 3-year releases is you decide 3 years ago what you're going to deliver today. And if I had, hindsight, I would never have delivered what we delivered, from 3 years ago. And that happens every release. There's certain things that we just don't need anymore. So this gives us that capability to have the customer value focus constantly helping us to refine the roadmap. We want to add value through Agile. We really, really, really think that the customers that participate in the Agile environment are getting a lot of value out of this. And actually, every other customer who doesn't participate is actually receiving a significant value just because those other guys are stepped forward and participated. All the features in 1401 and 1402, those are all things that the general public are getting as added value because we have these customer partners who are willing to actually step forward and work with us. And obviously, we want to continue to provide that rich history, expanding community, and show everyone out there that we can work together and we have a great future together. We always include this slide. I'm not going to read it to you, but that basically says, hey, this is the best information we have available. And we're giving you everything we know, and we're giving it on, as best as we can. But, hey, we're being agile. So things can change and will change. So with that, we can open the call up to any questions. If you want to ask a question, you can hit #6 and open up for questions. And I'll go ahead and allow you to do that. Let's try this one. Clyde, are you on? Can you open up? I'm hoping that you can open up.
Yeah, can you hear me?
There you go. Great. I know you were like 90% involved with all this anyhow, so you probably don't have any questions, but ask me a question anyhow.
When and how will it be publicized that the enhancements are being delivered with the V14 maintenance? How will you notify the customer base? So the version 1401 was a long-running project, and we've actually published PDC, and that's gone out on the communities now. So there's the communities, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, we made an announcement for 1401. We're kind of learning this Agile process and working with our validation partners. So one of the things that we can, I guess, basically every validation partner, people that are in the validateca.com, they get insight into what we're doing every step of the way. But those clients who are not involved only get to see it when we do, if you will, a drop or an announcement. So our plan right now is that probably about every 4 to 6 months, as we work through the version 1402 project, that we will take the feature functionality that our validation partners, our QA group, everyone has signed off on, and we think it's ready to go, and we'll place that in downloadable PTFs that are available through CARS maintenance, eventually through CARS, but of course there'll be new PTFs, so CARS is usually like a 3-month-old thing. But you will have PTFs available, and once we have those available as GA PTFs, we're going to announce to the client base, here is 1402's first drop of new functionality, and we expect to probably do that for the 1402 project probably around May of this year. I can't give an exact date, but what we will do, working with our validation partners, is select the feature functionality that everyone has agreed is ready to go, ready for general publication, and we'll basically make that available as an announcement through the community and probably as a PDC, because a lot of folks, we want to make sure we cover the entire base, so someone who's not part of the community will still get, if they're in our support organization, they'll get a PDC that will announce it. So to kind of answer your question, what we want to do for 1402 is probably every 4 to 6 months on a regular cadence, provide that to the users. Here's a list of functionality that we've added. Here are the PTFs you need to have on your system to get it. And here are the documentation, the very key pieces of documentation you need to explain how to use the functionality. And we'll do that on a cadence of like every 4 to 6 months. I think the big thing we want to do more than anything is to have customers get used to this. Because right now it's something brand new and they're really not understanding how to do it. So we're going to do, we'll try to get this in a normal kind of cadence. Does that answer your question? That answers it with respect to 14, but I was interested in 15. How regularly, often are you going to package up the 14 developed enhancements and ship them out for 15?
Our goal for 15 is that anything we do for 14 will be in 15, either in the same sprint or the following sprint, which is about 30 days. So clients that are on 15
and what we can do a different announcement. I think we probably should do it. We'll do a different announcement for the 15.0 clients, but I do not expect that there'll be more than about a 30-day delay for the total group, if you will. I would like to do them both together. In some cases, maybe we'll be able to if the feature functionality is in sync. But of course, our GA-ness and our availability to make this GA and make it available to everybody is based on the partners we have that are testing. So, but my goal is 30 days for 15.
Okay, so if I continue to download the maintenance on a regular basis, I should see the 15 fixes pop up.
Yep, you'll see them in 15 as they go. Yep.
All right, thank you.
So, so Clyde was our guinea pig, and he was able to do that. Anyone else on the phone, you can just hit *6 and be opened up, or #6 and be opened up and ask a question. Are there any other questions out there? Come on, there are 27 people on the phone. I can pick a name and ask. All right, I'm not going to put anybody else on the spot. Hopefully everybody enjoyed the presentation. We're right at our drop dead time, so I want to make sure that we go ahead and end on time. Thank everybody for their attention. Again, my name is Kevin Shuma. If you don't know that by now, you can reach me at kevin.shuma, S-H-U-M-A, @ca.com, or Sue Brudy, Susan.Brudy, B-R-U-D-E, @ca.com, who's our product owner. We'd be glad to talk to you, or anyone on the staff of CA Datacom. Just reach out to any of us, whether it's a support call or whatever, and we'd be glad to have you talk to us about this, the Datacom and Ideal roadmap, about our Agile processing, how to get involved and be part of our Validate team. All these things would be great subjects to talk to one of our technicians on in the next call. So with that, I thank you all for your attention, and I hopefully have provided you with some great information.
Thanks, Kevin.
And Sue, I guess we'll end the recording now?
Yep. Yes, I'm going to end the recording now. Thank you, everybody.